services. I'm glad to talk with you. Our next speaker will be Kirill Soloviev from Acronis. Kirill, hi, you're welcome. And I believe that all those involved in localization should listen to this presentation. This is a must-have presentation for you, and if you're living. So, I heard Kirill's presentations first time at UTIC Conference in Moscow, and there Kirill was telling us about their process of selecting a translation company for their multi-million projects. Well, we'll not provide more details about those millions, but anyway, as far as I understand, it's about at least hundreds of thousands of US dollars, well, more or less, within that range. And there was a huge system which had some criteria for selection, and it all ended up in a situation where from the whole lot of companies there were just two potential suppliers, prospective suppliers, and then Kirill would choose between those two based on his internal feeling. And as our experience has shown, we have made the right choice, and now we are happy with it. But today my topic is a bit different. I will talk about something which is not related to the selection of suppliers, and I'll tell you more in a minute.
Давайте.
Что?
Давайте.
I think we are to get more people. I did run a lot of promotion about your presentation. I said that if they miss your presentation, they can just leave the conference. Well, I suggest that we start. If more people come and join us, then they're welcome. Okay, let's start. So, good afternoon, dear guests. Welcome, dear colleagues here in this room, and all those who listen to me and look at me on the internet. I'm Kirill Soloviev, Localization Manager, Localization Director at Acronis. Today I'll share some views which are not that typical. I'll share customers' views on technical translation and localization. This is probably not exactly what most of the audience would like to hear today, but I hope that it will still be of interest to you. So what am I going to share with you today? I will tell you about the way Acronis arranged localization of our new corporate website. This is just very briefly my topic. Customers' view on how localization can be arranged based on our experience. And I'll structure my presentation in the following way. My key goal for you to get is to provide you with some overview of how localization can be done in such a project, the team structure, some overview of localization process, and maybe some hidden obstacles of both technical and organizational nature that we have been faced with, and then to show the direction of our further development after this large-scale project. I will start with with a couple of words about the essence of this project. What is a corporate website? Why did we need to localize it? Then I will tell you how we did it, and then I will share some difficulties and some experience that we've got. And I'd like to repeat again that maybe this is some view from the outside, not from within the translator's audience, but I believe that it may be of interest to you. You will see some different view, and you will better understand how a mid-sized corporate customer or a big corporate customer for some people treats localization processes and just how it goes. Okay, before we go on, I'll share a couple of words about our company background. Who knows about Acronis? Raise your hand. Well, great. That's more than at any other conference where I asked the same question. Did anybody use our products? Great. We even have our loyal customers, loyal users here. For those of you who have never used them or never heard about us, I'll tell you that Acronis is an international global software company with our sales exceeding $100 million, and we develop software for backup, or more exactly, backup, backup and restore with virtualization, cloud technologies, and so on. This is a system software which is sold in international markets, and of course we are quite active in localization because those markets provide much of our profits, and I manage this process for the company for all types of content, for all areas of our business, and I will tell you first of all about our website. So, what are we localizing and what was our project about? Let us start with thinking a bit about our experience with corporate websites at large, including those of software companies. I'm sure that pretty much everybody here has visited those, maybe some big websites, maybe smaller ones. I don't think that's important, but in any case, generally there are three core tasks. First of all, to provide a visitor with information about the company's activities, its products, and their benefits. The second objective is a commercial one, which is quite important in our case because our website is an e-commerce one. You can buy our software there, or you can order an offer for cost calculation for corporate products. And finally, for users who have already purchased our products, or are real users, they have to get technical support, product updates, documentation, and so on. I believe that all of you are aware of that. What other objectives and tasks does the corporate website of a software company have? Maybe not so obvious ones. First of all, in addition to just visiting that site and becoming not prospective but real clients, sometimes clients want to get some discount if there are some special offers. An important type of our visitors is our partners, our sales partners and technology partners who may want to establish some relationship with us. Quite often we get media people, journalists visiting our website. They're interested in our company's new releases and interesting developments in our organizational company structure and so on. Among the visitors of corporate website, quite often there are also people who want to get a job with our company, who want to work for us. And finally, without going too much into it, a corporate website is also a strong tool for our internal team. First of all, for our marketing team, because this team uses the website to streamline sales, to increase the conversion level, and to do all sorts of things we are not to discuss in every detail here. So I believe that everybody understands that Acronis has always had its corporate website, and it looked more or less like this. Well, that was like 12 years ago. If you look in a less distant past, then last year it looked more or less like this. And you may notice that there are all those items here. Product information, you can buy products here, partners can get some interesting information, useful information here, and there is support, technical support. So the website seems to look nice, to be up to its objectives and tasks. Why then doing all these things? Well, actually, there are several reasons why a large company may decide to change its website look and feel. In our case, those reasons were like this. First of all, there has been a new company management, which has been very active in all areas, and it was initiated by our new CEO. This was the primary reason to change our website, to start this whole project. Going into more detail, we were given a task to change the visual look and feel of the website, visual style, because it was a bit outdated, to change the company's brand, including logo, corporate colors, and other things which you always see and use. Also, we had to completely redesign our website, both externally for our clients, for our visitors, in terms of the content provided there, how it's arranged, how it's placed, site navigation, and so on. And also internally, we had to change the platform, technology platform used to run this website. So with all those tasks, we decided to launch a project to completely redesign and change our website. We created a team, we planned the process, we designed the architecture, we allocated a budget, and all these other things were done in corporate level. And in several months, we got a new child, so to say, a new corporate website for our company, and you can see that it looks a bit different. This is a brief background. Maybe I would not be telling you about this project here if this project had nothing to do with localization. So the company's site was first localized into 14 languages, and of course we wanted to keep those and to develop that feature as much as possible. So we used our team and we started planning the localization process. What is the volume of your website in terms of the number of words? I'll tell you in a minute. But on the process side, you have to understand that since the development was almost from scratch, we had to do localization in line with, at the same time as we were developing the website. It's not good or bad, it's just how it goes with all those projects. And it adds some difficulties because we had to work concurrently with developers. We had to handle internationalization. We had to prepare the website for localized content and do the localization itself. And in a minute, I'll tell you about the ways we were working on it. Speaking about your question, Konstantin, the core part of the project is project team. Even in this technology track, we have heard more than once that people are the key in every activity. It's not any different with us. Without going into details of development and how it was arranged, the team that I managed, I was a project manager for our website localization, and our team included the following key people. First of all, my own localization team. Then we had our regional marketing teams in various countries, each of them being in charge of their own region or country. And the third component was about our suppliers or vendors, our localization partners who provided language services to us. And translation companies work with those, and translators, editors, and all sorts of other types of linguists work with those translation companies. And these are the key resources, the key assets for this project. The scale of this project, at the initial stage, we started with core languages, and we split them into 3 or 4 tiers based on the priority level. First of all, there is tier 1, most important for the company in commercial terms, and then as the commercial importance lowers, we go into those other tiers. So on the process side, we have split them into groups, and we decided, first of all, that we should not be doing concurrently, because it would be very inefficient when you consider creating the website from scratch. So we started with these 3 languages. Unfortunately, no Ukrainian here, but it includes Russian, so you, or at least some of you, may feel hopefully that you're somehow close spiritually to this project. Then after that we switched to tier 2, then tier 3, and we have been working on tier 3 now, and then we move lower down to tier 14, which we also have somewhere down there. Hopefully you can feel the project size, project scale now, and you get some understanding how it was structured and where are its roots. And I think it's also important to see what has to happen in the course of localization of a website like ours. For some reason, people usually think that website localization is first of all about texts. Well, of course, there is some degree of truth to it, but our story is much more interesting. First of all, our website has a lot of content, but there are also many other items which also have to be localized, and one of our priority tasks was to understand what are we to localize, and it turned out that in addition to text-based content, it also has navigation elements, and it has to be treated very specially. It's more like UI localization. There are some strings which we used for document names, for example, and they have their specifics. There are graphic items, for example, product screenshots. The website mentions pricing. Unfortunately, it's difficult to see it here on this screen, but they're different for all countries and languages. Company phone numbers, videos, multimedia content, web forms where you can enter your information, and finally documents that users can download from our website. So it's not just about item 1, but all these things altogether make up what we call the scope of localization for a website like ours. Microphone translator, interpreters cannot hear speaker. Well, another important, very important component of the website localization process is about adaptation for various regions with their specifics, because different regions are about different products and different services that the company wants or is able to promote in those regions. And it happens quite often that not only languages are different, but maybe even countries using basically the same language, or maybe different dialects of the same language, slightly different dialects, have to have different websites. So in our case, everything may be different because we sell different products in different regions. We have some types of services which we cannot offer in, say, Japan, but we can easily offer them in Germany, and so on and so forth. All these are also parts of the internationalization and localization process for a website. So you have to make it, you have to ensure that it's possible to have different content for different regions, and the website still works and is useful, and then you structure this content in such a way that users have their respective part to see. Interpreters cannot hear the question without the microphone. Well, still, do you hear interference from next room? Okay, we can live with it. I can hear it better than other. Konstantin Yasiliani, I hear the familiar voice, yeah. So, dear colleagues, on with localization, web localization. Now, hopefully, you have some better understanding of what is the project, what we are talking about, what we are to localize. And then now let us see how this website localization process is run. Remember, one of our tasks was to change the technology platform, our content management system for the website, and to better understand the whole nicety of this mission, I'll tell you a bit about our old CMS that we have dropped. Look, our old platform, Acronis Site Manager, it looks like what you see here. This is our in-house system, developed in-house from scratch, using to the minimum extent standard popular tools, very complicated, very technology intensive, not very convenient, needs a lot of manual management. That's exactly not what you would like to use to create your corporate website. And on the localization, from the localization perspective, suffice it to say that look how the content was structured in this old system for you to understand the whole degree of horror all those translators had to deal with when working with this old system. I'm not sure you can see it on the screen, but basically the text that translators had to translate on our old website is a terrible mix of various markup languages, software programming languages, code, markup, formatting, and so on, in addition to the text content, which is foremost interest to us. And this org has been really huge. We have got 5,000 pages in English language alone over years, and now you multiply it by 14, and you can imagine the whole scale. More to it, each and every page has a lot of objects within it, a lot of entities. It's not just one file, one object. It's like compiled from a lot of small items, and finally kill this old system, I would tell you that for each website, for different regions, say for Japan, for Russia, for Germany, had to be supported manually. So to publish a localized page in 18 languages, you had to do it 18 times. Of course, it's not that convenient. And the localization process in this old system was about a lot of problems, starting with it being completely manual. And the key problem was this. Not many people think about it, but still the localization process starts with deciding what are we to localize, what objects, what entities have to be translated. And this is the very first key step. And even there, the old system already created a lot of problems, because when you had to understand which objects have been translated and which have not, which ones need translation and which do not, it was impossible, pretty much impossible to do it. Not to say about a lot of difficulties in that process. So one of the most important tasks and objectives for localization was to switch to a new CMS platform, as we call it, a new content management system, and we decided to use a very popular open source project called Drupal. Maybe some people here heard about it, and if you didn't hear about it, you definitely saw some websites which are built on Drupal, even if you don't know that they're built on Drupal. As far as I know, there are hundreds of thousands of websites built on Drupal. It's used for very small websites. You can make your own website using Drupal, up to high-load sites. For example, if I'm not mistaken, U.S. White House in the US has their public website built on Drupal. So we are not unique as far as platform is concerned, but it has made our life much easier. First of all, from the multi-language perspective, and it has its advantages for localization. Then about translation process support, which we are to discuss in a minute, and finally it's completely open source, and our engineers can develop more things using it. Translation process itself. So when we dropped our old platform and switched to Drupal, we have immediately been able to see what are we to translate. Now we finally got some understanding what do we have to assign to translators to translate. Believe it or not, but it eliminates a lot of problems for the customer. And translators are usually also happy because they don't need to do something which should not be done in the very first place, and then they have to do some really needed things before the deadline. We have eliminated a lot of manual steps, which has made life much easier for our team, which has to support localization from the customer side. That's how localization looks in Drupal. The key item is a module or subsystem which enables us to send tasks for translation. It's called translation management. It looks like this. The key task is always, like usual, to select the items to be translated, and the system enables us to do it easily, to control all those objects sent for translation. We can see the word count, we can see the status, and so on and so forth. And then for each particular object, for each particular item, we can see the status, how much of our website has been localized, whether all pages have been completed, whether all those menus, strings, and other things on the website have been completed. So it's sort of paradise for us. How to use this paradise in the translation process? There are two basic features in Drupal. One of those is online translation. So, using our contemporary terminology, we can say that it has a very primitive cut tool embedded. You can select those items and embed them in the translation. And remember all those things described by Fedor Fisai in his previous presentation. You can imagine that we don't have all those here, so we are not that actively using that solution. As an alternative, we use standard XLIF format, which is also supported by Drupal, and this is some content in XLIF. I believe that everybody has seen it, you know how it looks, and it's not any different in our case. And most importantly, many cut tools can handle it, and many translators are aware of it. So, XLIF. This is our core item used throughout, across the whole localization process. We export files in XLIF format from Drupal database, and in those files there is content to be translated, and then it's analyzed, goes through the translation memory and terminology database. In this project we have been using MemaQ. I hope many of you know it and use it and maybe like it. And this XLIF file goes through translation and quality assurance, and then this translated file, translated content, is sent back and can be nicely imported in Drupal database, and we get our localized website. Looks very simple. So, what is behind the scene, behind this very important block, although a small one, like translation and quality assurance? I think this is the most content-rich slide, so I'll tell you a bit more about it. How the process itself is structured, what sort of process we used in our website localization process, and what sort of process we have been using now to support it up to date. Konstantin really asked me to tell you about this process, so I will welcome any question about it. So, look, there are four key participants or stakeholders in this process. What are the roles in this process of, say, translation, let us call it this way? First of all, we, as a customer, as a company, have to decide initially what do we need to translate, what sort of content we need to translate, and then prepare XLIF files. Now we can easily make them and export them using Drupal. The next level is our service provider or vendor. This is usually a large company which provides us services, translation services for a number of languages. In this case, it's about 12 key languages handled by the same partner counterpart. And we have one company working with us on all those languages, and they undertake full responsibility for those. They have to receive those files to prepare them for translation. So from XLIF, they import them into MemaQ, and then they can now understand what are we translating, what is the scope of this whole horror, what is the word count, what is the percentage of TM segments, and so on. And then they can schedule and plan it. With the next level, there are some subcontractors, each of those being in charge of one language or a small number of languages. So we are talking about SLVs, or maybe even some groups or teams of freelancers handling some language in a great way. All in all, after this whole process, which may look quite long, it comes to translators or linguists who can now do something that we pay money for. And I hope this is something that many of you can do and like doing. Then, through this chain, the translated files, translated content comes back to us, checked automatically with some quality control tools, including Xbench, mentioned by Fyodor in his previous presentation. So then they are received back at our vendors level, and there is something interesting happening there. There is independent quality assurance there. Many of you are probably used to a situation where the client does it on their own. Again, Fyodor told us that sometimes he would send files, send a glossary, and then accept some comments. But in our case, we have some intermediary level, our vendor. When those translations are sent back by subcontractors, they check them before they send them to us for each language, and it allows maintaining quality at acceptable level for each language, irrespective of what happens with those previous counterparts. After those changes suggested by independent reviewer or made by partners, after some arbitration, we get the final XLIF, which could be imported straight into Drupal, and then we forget about it. But interestingly, there is an interesting feature in XLIF. Unfortunately, XLIF is not that visual. So many of you are aware of that context problem, context issue, and we see it all too well. So to get a good localized website, not just an average one, we do a very simple thing. We upload that XLIF to our website, and we see completely localized pages, and translators can check them against the context. This is language testing, as we call it. So here you can find a lot of interesting issues which were not so obvious when working with XLIF, and they might go unnoticed with XLIF. Concurrently, we also carry out other types of testing, not only language testing, but also our vendor checks pages for any sort of problems like layout, items not completely localized, some issues which are not the fault of translators, some features, some links not working, and so on. Anyway, after this whole process, we get an updated version of the translation, we get updated XLIF files, and then we can import them back into our website. And seems that we could stop here and say, okay, now dear users, you're welcome to visit our website. Could we wait a minute with questions? Okay? No, that's not it as yet. Like I said at the beginning, one of the key participants, key stakeholders in the international company, in that localization process, is our marketing team, international marketing team. These are the key people in our situation, and they are between they are the last stage before this content translated and polished is published for end users. They have to check that that content conforms to their quality criteria. So within the initial project of website preparation, and then when maintaining that website, from time to time our regional marketing people check those translated texts, and they would always send a lot of interesting comments and suggestions about translators. And of course we have to check all those, we have to take them into account, and then there is another round of updating our website, making those corrections, analyzing, sometimes challenging those suggestions made by our original team, but usually that doesn't happen. And only after that we can finally say that, well, luckily, finally our process of localizing this one web page has been completed, and only after final testing and correcting the errors it can be published for end users. This is an interesting process, not the simplest one, and that's what's behind the scenes for a thing which seems like trivial, localization of a corporate website. Well, What other interesting fine nuances could be there? After we have completed our initial project, 3 months spent on our key languages, then we switch them into maintenance mode, whereby from time to time, in our case once or twice a week, there is a new content published to the website, and in some way or another it has to go through the changed and adopted version of the same process we showed on the previous slide. So the website localization is a process which never ends, and it always goes in circles, day to day, week to week. The more the faster it should go. Okay, I think we have discussed the key details, core details of the process. What are things that caused most of problems for us? Well, as usual, there's a lack of time, and there are budget constraints and resource constraints in the project, but also it's about interaction with marketing teams. I don't know whether many of you have seen feedback from marketing people, but those of you who have seen it, you know that it's quite difficult to handle it. And we see it also from our own experience. First of all, those people are the final authority for each and every word to be published to the website. Second, those people want to change that content, and they use their authority, their power to do it, and quite often corrections and changes that they suggest may seem strange. Third, those people work under their own schedule, and in addition to this task, they also do a lot of other things, so it's very difficult to keep them within the schedule. And four, if all the previous things are not sufficient yet, there are different people working on website in different countries, and for example in Germany we have a nice in-house team handling our content, spending a lot of time on it, but in the Netherlands the only person able to help us with website is our sales expert, who can spend the most half an hour a day on our website, and this whole process have to go to be completed in time everywhere and within the budget, and you have to be ready for these problems. Second, there are technology problems, technology issues, and unfortunately we haven't resolved all of those as yet, and not all of them can be easily resolved. Some of them are about the Drupal structure and the way we use it for internationalization and localization. For example, we have mentioned several things which can affect translators. For example, translated entities may lack some permanent identifiers, permanent IDs, which makes it more difficult to use TM and to use the content in the most efficient and effective way, and it's not always possible. Second, you're not always able to understand which page in the website holds this content being translated. I believe that many of you have been faced with this problem, and there is no simple solution, unfortunately. Third, there are internal procedures for localization team to apply for this process. They take quite a lot of time. They're done manually, and so the cycle goes slower and the process is slower, gets slower. In particular, after each and every round of corrections to the localized content, after translation, after our own internal review, in-house review, after language testing, after marketing check, every time you have to update the XLIF, you have to upload it to the website again and again, and if this doesn't suffice yet, you cannot use the same version of the file. You have to create a new one every time, and you understand that it adds a lot of interesting details in the process. And last but not least, in addition to the technology we use being imperfect, it's also important how we use it, and unfortunately we have made a number of mistakes within this project, and we are still correcting them now. Similar problems here. Lack of context for translators who translate our content. It's not always easy to understand when we can safely start translating new content, and so the text sent for translation is not always ideal, consistent, and clear, and things sent for translation are not always things that should be translated. For example, data and text are mixed and messed up sometimes. There are sometimes things which we are translating, although they should not be translated, and even though we have updated our website. We still continue using the old system for some parts of our huge hybrid website, so to say it. But we are still optimistic. We tend to be positive about the future, and we have been working consistently on correcting those things, improving the content architecture on our website, first of all, and improving the Drupal module for translation management. We are working on accelerating our localization cycle, import export, checking translation memory update, and we are thinking on tighter integration of this process with existing or some alternative tools and processes. That's basically all I wanted to say. If there are any questions, I would gladly answer them. Please raise your hand if you have a question.
So we have one question and Otto, and I also have questions. So let's take a little bit of the break. So, can I have a question? Can I ask a question? Also, yeah. Thank you. It's very interesting. You showed all the process, how it's organized. First of all, you selected translators. After that, you gave to the marketing. How have you tracked it? Can it be done in Drupal, or you have your own system? That's a very good question. There is a few systems. Drupal has only basic functions which can track the performance of some facts, whether they are done or not. This very limited use of information. We use corporate system of management of the project to track the completeness of the projects and the completeness of separate files done by our partners. There is no single solution to this problem. It means you send to marketing through your own internal system. Yes, we have our own internal system which works with defects, and this system we use for that purpose. And we have several systems of working with clients in Drupal. Yes, Maxim. Kirill, I have a question. In Drupal, as you know, there are two different types of approaches to internalization or localization. One approach is for basic kinds based on no translation, and the second is objective approach, everything connected with the entity translation module. As a person who has localized his own website in Drupal, I came across a problem when sometimes it is necessary to unite these two variants because they are not compatible with this or that type of contact, according to different reasons. As far as I know, your corporate website was done in Drupal 7.0. You followed the entity approach, or do you use no translation in some cases? Do you look at the results which will come out in Drupal 8 version, in the 8th version of Drupal? Are you going to use new version in terms of localization if you thought about it? Yes, excellent question, Maxim. I didn't dwell on it. We used no translation module as a basic one, and there were several reasons for it. Firstly, we wanted to choose a solution which could be more universal, and due to the reason we have to make differences between different regions, no translation has a priority to us, but there is no panacea, unfortunately, and in some places we would include entity model, and we are thinking about it now, how to remake it in some cases. So the question is about 8th version of Drupal. It was connected with it. Entity model is considered as a basic one in the future by its creators. And I foresee that perhaps it will be more difficult for you in the future to be within the same model when entity model in Drupal will remain. What is your forecast upon the future in terms of the 8th version of Drupal? Yeah, it's clear, Maxim. So the project has just been realized, and it will last for several years more. I think we will constantly evolutionize and change models in different sections of the sites. But I think it won't be soon that we change into the 8th version of Drupal. Sometimes we have no possibility to make all changes, to follow all the changes. Before we could think about it, there must be actually a certain solution of our current problems. My question, Kirill. So, what was more difficult? Working with developers, because sometimes it's a problem, working with marketing, or choosing the content? You have 14 languages now. Do you plan to localize content at the same time? Thank you for the question. Yes, we are doing the shift to 8 languages now, and each week we are trying to release a new version of architecture of system, which contain all system languages on all platforms, and does everything simultaneously. Now technology makes us do it. As far as the most difficult issue is concerned, I think that in every project, the organizational part is the most difficult one. In our case, the most difficult part was the partnership with marketing colleagues. I don't want to diminish their favors, their merits, but very often we work with the text in linguistic terms, results with the problem. There are always people who will tell you what you had done wrong. It cannot be avoided. It is a part of corporate life. Kirill, a tricky question. How much do you charge for the word? Let me not answer this question. More or less 20 cents a word. I cannot answer it. So the last question. De facto, Acronis is in Moscow now. It's not precise information. At least you work from Moscow. Yes, I work from Moscow. But nevertheless, your main contractor is foreign companies. So the budget which might be executed by vendors from Russia and Ukraine goes abroad. You mean loss of a capital? Yes. Why Russian vendors are not suitable for you? Why are foreign companies more suitable? What do they have what we don't have? I don't have any prejudices against companies from all countries of the world. Last September, we were at Locate 2013, and we said that despite the fact that Russian companies were the participants of our conference, they couldn't fulfill the tasks we set to them. We don't know why, and the reason was, I think, in the technological part. They couldn't do the parts of our initial project which were connected with engineering procedures, in particular testing procedures. The testing procedures of our tender were failed by our participants. I think that in the future, as the procedures differentiate, I think the most important is the technological sphere, and you need to do it seriously. Either you do it on the translation level or on technological level. Thank you very much.